A controversial call and coaches challenge in Edmonton, craziness in Montreal, and double overtime in New Jersey. We talk about all the playoff action and more right now on Locked On NHL Game Night.
When that final horn sounds, you know it's time for Locked On NHL Game Night. All the post-game reactions to every game across the league, every single night, with insights only the hosts at Locked On can provide. Prepare to experience game day reactions like never before. Only on Locked On NHL Game Night. Your team every day.
Hey, hockey fans, welcome to Locked On NHL Game Night, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. Thanks for making Locked On NHL Game Night your place to get a recap of the night in the NHL. We are available 7 days a week, wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code Locked On NHL for $20 off your first purchase. I'm Eddie Garcia, a wounded LA Kings fan on the West Coast. He is Shukri Wrights, a Boston Bruins fan on the East Coast. Together, we are here to discuss all the goals, saves, big moments, and stories from the night in the Stanley Cup playoffs with the help of some of our local experts. And Shu, we had three teams, the Oilers, Canadiens, and Devils, all down 2-0, all looking for home ice to get them back into their respective series.
The word of the night for me, moments. That's what the Stanley Cup playoffs are all about. And tonight, we sure did not get a shortage of any sort of potentially pivotal moments in each game tonight. And I can't wait to get into it with you on this episode.
Well, let's waste no time. Let's get right into it. We start with Game 3 between the Kings and Oilers. LA taking the first two games on home ice. Now the series shifts north of the border to Edmonton. Of course, the Oilers made it to the Stanley Cup final a year ago, but on the ropes, if they were to lose this Game 3, we know that they would be in big trouble. But in the end, Edmonton gets a 7-4 victory, but don't be fooled by the final score. The Oilers were down 4-3 in the third period in this one. We had a controversial video reversal, a controversial coach's challenge. We'll get into all of it, but first, let's get a game report on this from one of our local experts, the host of Locked On Oilers.
Where seemingly nothing could go right for the Edmonton Oilers, they finally caught a break. Nick Zararis of Locked On Oilers here after the Oilers' crucial 7-4 win over the Los Angeles Kings in Game 3 of their first round series. And I would be remiss if I didn't bow my head in appreciation to the hockey gods for finally throwing the Oilers a bone in this series. And what has been a struggle at points to find offense consistently, to make saves consistently, the Oilers caught a break when Jim Hiller, the LA Kings coach, decided to challenge the Evander Kane goal for goaltender interference. And what was a quick review, the officials determined that there was no goaltender interference. The Kings were assessed a bench minor for delay of game for unsuccessful challenge, and the Oilers came down and scored less than 10 seconds after that face-off, and that was the difference in this game. In a series where the Oilers haven't been able to hold on to any momentum at all, they were able to ride the momentum of the Kane goal, followed by the power play goal off of the delay of game penalty, and ultimately prevailed, putting away two empty net goals. And most importantly, they gave themselves some breathing room, putting the series at 2-1. The teams return to action Sunday evening in Edmonton. For more on this big win for the Oilers, be sure to check out Locked On Oilers wherever you get your podcasts.
And thanks again to Nick Zararis, the host of Locked On Oilers, for that report. So let's backtrack a little bit into the third period of this one, Shu. 13 minutes left. Oilers tie it up on an Evander Kane goal. Now, the call on the ice was no goal because he had kicked it in with his skate. They reviewed it, and upon further review, they overturned the call and said that he got his stick on the puck after he had kicked it. Now, if you're watching on YouTube, I'm wearing an LA Kings hat. So you can take my opinion on this with a grain of salt if you'd like. And this is something with me in replay in all sports. If you're going to overturn the call on the ice, it better be clear and definitive that the call was wrong. And I watched the replay several times. Now I'm watching the LA feed. I'm not in Toronto. I'm not in the war room. Maybe they have an angle that I don't. I never saw clear evidence that that call should have been overturned. I'm biased. You're not. What were your thoughts on it?
This is exactly what I meant in my earlier tease when I said moments. This was the moment of this game, very possibly the entire series. So, the moment. Evander Kane. He's on a goal mouth scramble, and it looked to me, at least from my own naked eyes, that it was a kicking motion. The puck squirts in, and we have a tie game. And the Kings choose to rightfully challenge it. But they challenged for goaltender interference. The goal was upheld. And the problem that I have is that it wasn't the problem of challenging, but why are you challenging for goaltender interference? I don't think that situation called for the challenge for that particular instance. I would have understood if you were challenging for the kicking distinction, which there clearly was. That is where my problem lied. So, in regards to the Oilers, did they ever get a gift? Absolutely, they did. But sometimes in the Stanley Cup playoffs, you're going to get the lucky bounce. And boy, oh boy, when I tell you, that was the lucky bounce that certainly turned the tide in this game, very possibly the series. Because after that, just 10 seconds later, there was another power play for the Oilers. They take the lead that they wouldn't relinquish, and the rest is history.
Well, that was kind of part two of it for me. Number one, I don't know that I ever saw clear evidence that the call on the ice of a kicked goal should have been overturned. But then after that call is made, the game is tied. LA Kings head coach Jim Miller decides to challenge for goalie interference. I did not agree with that call. I didn't think the risk versus reward wasn't enough. You also have to take into account what's going on in the game. And this wasn't two teams trading goals back and forth. This was the Kings in the third period, completely defensive, trying to hold on to a 1-goal lead. Now that lead is gone. The crowd is completely into it. And again, risk versus reward. If you get it right, I understand you still have the lead. But if you get it wrong, they've got the game tied, and they continue with that momentum, and they scored immediately. Yeah. I just didn't think it was worth it. I thought the Kings should have said, all right, the call didn't go our way. We're even 4-4, and now let's play it out the rest of the way and see how it goes. I just didn't think that risk was worth it for the LA Kings, so I did not agree with that coaching decision to challenge for goalie interference. For the Edmonton Oilers, go ahead.
No, I know. Just real quick, I didn't agree with it either, and I think also that when you go back and you look at it, and people are going to look at it tens, if not hundreds of thousands of times between now and as well as Game 4, I think that decision in itself is what cost them potentially dearly because of the fact that I look at momentum and how momentum absolutely changed, especially when the Oilers went on a power play and scored a power play goal. Man, this decision is going to be second guessed for a while, and rightfully so. But man, the replay didn't do the Oilers any favors because I think, like I said, I do think that should not have been overturned. There was no clear-cut evidence that the stick was on the puck. If anything else, man, the NHL, they really, that's a tough one. That really is a tough one. You talk about a momentum changer. That was it.
Well, we'll see how it affects the rest of the series. I will say, as a Kings fan, I still think the Kings are the better team, and I thought Edmonton had a lot of things go their way in this game to pull it out. That said, also the Kings deserve some blame as well because of the shell they went into in the third period instead of continuing to play the way they were playing for most of the game. They took their foot off the gas. Edmonton definitely put their foot on the gas and were able to get those 2 goals and then a couple of empty netters to get back into the series. Also, I would mention special teams had been huge for the Kings in games 1 and 2. The Oilers had no power play goals in the first 2 games. They had 2 in this one, as did the Kings. So it was even from that standpoint. So it was not the big advantage for the Kings in game 3 as it had been in games 1 and 2. Kings still lead the series 2-1. Game 4 coming up in Edmonton on Sunday. We had goalie drama and more in Montreal. That is next on Locked On NHL Game Night. Hey, did you know your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices, no console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe or sign in to Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to play. Dive into hundreds of premium titles from EA Sports College Football 25 to Call of Duty Black Ops 6 to Avowed. As easy as you stream your favorite shows. It's gaming made simple, and it's on your Fire TV with 4K streaming. You can also watch more than 1.5 million movies and TV shows from your favorite subscribed services like Netflix, Prime Video, Disney Plus Max, and more. As far as how you find this, well, you go to amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On, amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On, Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compared controller required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K 2nd Gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max 1st and 2nd Gen, and Fire TV Cube 3rd Gen. All right, up next, we had the Montreal Canadiens hosting the Washington Capitals in Game 3 of their series. This might sound familiar, but the home team won the first 2 games, and now the team on home ice looking for a big win to get back into the series. You knew the atmosphere in the Bell Center was going to be wild, and this one did not disappoint. We had a little bit of everything. Goalie issues. We had a fight on the bench between opposing players. But in the end, the home fans go home happy. Montreal with a 6-3 win. Let's get a report on this one from one of the co-hosts of Locked On Canadiens.
Series isn't over. The Montreal Canadiens won Game 3, the first one at the Bell Center in this series, by a score of 6-3, a game that really kind of got out of hand at the end. Ian Boisvert, Locked On Canadiens here, coming to you immediately after the Montreal Canadiens defeated Washington in Game 3 of their first-round playoff series. Both goalies don't finish the game. Montembeault leaves with a somewhat quiet injury. They went to commercial once and came back, and he was gone. And Logan Thompson gets run into on the Slavkovsky goal by his own guy, and it looks like that injury is quite severe for Thompson, so we'll have to see how that shapes up for the rest of the series. But look, Montreal fed off the energy of that building. The Bell Center was rocking. We knew it would be. We knew it would be a factor. And they just didn't give up. They got more depth scoring, but above all, that top line continued to succeed. Cole Caulfield finished the game with over 10 shots and a goal. Slavkovsky adds a goal. Suzuki has a goal. The power play picks up a couple for Montreal. And look, now it seems like goaltending might be a wash for the rest of this series. We'll have to see how that plays out. But look, it's a different series now. Montreal, if they can manage to take Game 4 and make this a best-of-3 series heading back to Washington, it's a very different idea of what this playoff series could be. So stick with us, Locked On Canadiens, the rest of the day. But Habs fans, celebrate. This one's for you. Very excited that we got to do that in front of a full building again.
Yeah, no doubt. Thanks to Ian Boisvert for that report, one of the hosts of Locked On Canadiens. As I said, we knew the Bell Center was going to be rocking. I mean, it is a special place up there for playoff hockey. He's right. I think the Canadiens absolutely fed off of that crowd. This has been a very close series. It's gone back and forth. A huge win, obviously, for Montreal to get back in the series.
I think tonight was just special for the city of Montreal to play in a playoff home game in a full building for the first time in 8 years. And watching the introduction on the broadcast on Friday night, man, when I tell you that I pretty much had chills watching as a hockey fan. I really felt that way. It was just incredible to watch. Now, as far as the game is concerned, what more can you possibly have asked for? Drama, fighting, goaltenders getting injured, Sam Montembeault getting injured, Logan Thompson getting injured. And then it became the battle of the backups between Jacob Dobesh and as well as Charlie Lindgren coming into the game as well. And when I tell you that when this game, what it ultimately came down to was just how big the young core came up. They came up huge in this game, and I think one of the things that really stood out to me was was two things. One, the way that the Canadiens just took advantage of opportunities, especially that third period where they just exploded offensively. And then number two, seeing how on the back of goaltending for the Montreal Canadiens really showed up huge was everything. It was truly everything. And then obviously including Joash Slavkovsky, who scored in this game, and as well as I think Christian Dvorak, who was really big in this game throughout from the beginning all the way to the end. He scored the goal to put the Canadiens up ahead for good. But the story of the night wasn't even so much the scoring or the goaltending. It was the fight on the bench. That was the story. And that was when I got my attention. I mean, Tom Wilson was pretty much going at it from warm-ups. And all the way up until that moment when he got into it between himself and Josh Anderson and other Montreal Canadiens who want to take liberties as well, man, it was incredible to see how the Canadiens, they just came together and said, you know, enough is enough. We're not going to be pushed around any longer. And they had a response, both in terms of after the whistle and as well as in terms of the score sheet as well. And that in itself was something that was really amazing to see.
And for those that didn't see it, you might wonder, how did two guys on different teams wind up on the bench?
Yeah.
Getting into it. It was the end of the second period. The teams are going off the ice. They're kind of coming into the middle of the area there. And there was a scrap kind of melee ensued. And it just kind of ended up that Wilson and Anderson got into it by the door of the bench there for Washington. And next thing you know, they're in the bench. The linesman is on the
trying
bench
to break it up.
trying to break it up. I've never seen I love sports. You watch so many different things, and every once in a while you see something you've never seen before. I've never seen two players getting into a fight on another team's bench before, but we did see it in this one, which was very, very interesting. But Ian talked about it with the goaltending now, and you and I talked about it before this series started. I was cautious about what was going on in net for Washington. I didn't think Logan Thompson could just drop in after not playing for a couple of weeks and just be effective, but I was wrong. He was great in the first two games of the series. Not quite as good in this one, but still not bad. But he gets run into by his teammate Dylan Strome. Yeah. He can't put any weight on his left leg as they're helping him off the ice. We don't know. There's been no report yet about the severity. Certainly the eye test would lead you to believe he's not going to come back in this series. He may not come back at all. That's a huge blow for Washington, not only for this series, but if they're able to get out of this series down the road with Charlie Lindgren now maybe to carry the load. And who knows, Jakub Dobeš, the rookie from Montreal, we don't know the severity of Sam Montembeault's injury either. He may have to carry the load. So it is amazing the things that happen in this series for both teams in net. So we'll get a test of their depth going forward. But the Logan Thompson one really did not look good at all.
No, it didn't. And I was concerned once I realized shortly after that he wasn't going to come back in this game. Like, how would this impact Washington moving forward? And it's going to be interesting to see what happens in game number 4, because listen, the first two games of the series, one of the biggest storylines was the matchup between Sam Montembeault and Logan Thompson. Now it's going to be a showdown between the backups on Jakub Dobeš and as well as Charlie Lindgren as well. So I wonder in terms of how both Dobeš and Lindgren are going to handle being thrown into the fire, so to speak, because as we talked about, this was not supposed to be part of the plan. But now, because of injury, now both backup goaltenders for both teams respectively are going to be tested, and they're going to be tested pretty often in game 4. So it's going to be really interesting. But especially in the case of Washington, I'm curious to see how Charlie Lindgren will perform in game 4. But especially as the series continues to progress forward, should we go deeper into the series?
And here's a weird stat for you I saw that I'll just throw out there. The Washington Capitals are the only NHL team that has a losing record in playoff series when they win the first two games of a series. They're 4-6 in playoff series where they win the first two games. So that's very weird. And we'll see where it leads here. But getting off to a 2-0 lead for Washington, for whatever reason in their history, hasn't always worked out for them. But we'll see. Huge win for Montreal as they are now right back in this series. We had our first multiple overtime of this year's Stanley Cup playoffs. We'll tell you all about that next here on Locked On NHL Game Night. There's nothing like the energy of a live game, whether it's catching a last-minute NHL showdown or soaking in the excitement of an NBA matchup. But finding great seats at a great price, that used to be a challenge until I found Gametime. Gametime makes scoring last-minute tickets easier than ever. Prices actually drop as the event gets closer, and with their all-in pricing, you can see the total cost up front. No surprises at checkout. Save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, and theater events. And with their seat views before you buy, no surprise fees, and the lowest price guaranteed you can book with total confidence. Their lowest price guarantee means I never worry about overpaying. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that is code Locked On NHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, our final game to tell you about went a little bit extra in New Jersey. Devils hosting the Hurricanes in Game 3 of their series. Stop me if you've heard this before. The home team looking to get back in the series after losing the first 2 games on the road. That would be the case for the New Jersey Devils in this one. It started well for New Jersey, had a 2-0 lead, but then Carolina comes back in the third, ties it up. We would go overtime. We would go a second overtime before New Jersey gets the 3-2 victory. Let's get a report from both hosts on this one. We'll start with our host from Locked On Devils.
What's up? Trent Matthews of Locked On Devils here. And here are my quick thoughts after the New Jersey Devils picked up a big win in double overtime against the Hurricanes to cut the series lead in half, 2-1. The Devils desperately needed this. They got off to a good start in the first period, but the Hurricanes started to figure them out as the game progressed. And it looked like all hope was lost for the Devils because they couldn't connect on anything. Timo Meier, he was snake bitten a few times, and then come overtime, Shimo Nemitz came through. This was big for Nemitz. He had been struggling all regular season, and he was not a happy camper when he was sent down to the AHL. Everybody is happy outside the Prudential Center. I just walked outside the press box. So the Devils are back in this series, and they don't have to try to think about being down 3-0. I apologize for any commotion you might hear in the background. Everybody is passionate about their Devils.
All right, thanks to
that was
Trey,
great.
Thanks to Trey Matthews for that. Yeah, you got to love it. He's outside the arena. They got the horns blowing. People are excited. No, it was nothing wrong with that at all. They're happy Devils fans leaving the Prudential Center there in New Jersey. But the Devils had just 2 goals in 2 games coming in. The offense finally comes alive to an extent. But then they blow the 2-goal lead, and it goes overtime, and now it's anybody's game. And they were able to get the victory. We talk about playoff heroes. You never know who's going to be a hero in the playoffs. Simone Nemec, defenseman, first career playoff goal is your double overtime game winner. There's nothing like overtime playoff hockey. The drama of it, knowing that on any shot, the game can end, or it might go on all night. I mean, that's a little bit of what we had between the Devils and the Hurricanes.
It really is incredible. And, you know, there is a theme for this particular episode on this particular night. Home sweet home. All 3 home teams won their respective game 3s. And this particular game, a double overtime classic, was, I mean, my goodness. Listen, I'm not going to get on the Devils for blowing a 2-0 lead, especially in the third period. I mean, I thought it was ugly the way that they played in the third period in terms of the recklessness and allowing Carolina to get back into this game. But you got to thank Jacob Markstrom for being a hero in this one, because he definitely showed why to how all hockey fans all over, and as well as to general manager Tom Fitzgerald, as to why he was acquired over the summer. And he definitely showed what he was worth. And like, listen, I thought that offense, they were going to need players to step up huge. You saw Nico Hischier and Jesper Bratt, that line create goals and so forth. But you wondered once you got into overtime, who was going to step up, who was going to be the guy, who was going to be the hero. And that's part of the reason why I love the Stanley Cup playoffs, is because of the fact that a guy who was a healthy scratch to start the series, and Simone Nemec, he was the one who came up huge in that double OT. And especially for a Devils team that could not afford to obviously lose game 3 to fall behind 3-0, this was a huge pickup win for the Devils, and as well as for this team that needed to have a reason to believe that they can at least get back in the series. And now they're right back in it with the opportunity to tie it up on Sunday.
And we also have a report from the losing team on this one. Let's get a update from the host of Locked On Hurricanes.
Unfortunately, the run for a 3-0 series is not going to be the case for the Carolina Hurricanes after losing in double overtime to the New Jersey Devils. However, big credit to Sebastian Aho and Seth Jarvis to get 2 power play goals to tie the game at 2. Only took 6 minutes and 9 seconds. Frederick Anderson pretty much stood on his head the entire game. Really can't fault him for any of these goals. It is what it is. What can you do? Welcome to playoff hockey. We now have a series and now a big game 4 on Sunday as the Carolina Hurricanes look to hopefully go up 3-1 in the series and take the series back on the road to Carolina, which will be on Tuesday, April 29th for a game 5. So hopefully on Sunday, the Hurricanes get back in the win column and really put the pressure on the Devils. And hopefully the Canes will get it done in 5, but we'll definitely be interested to see how that works out. But safe to say, the series is not over yet, and we're at least going 5.
All right, and you called it, Chew. The theme of the night, getting back into the series, getting the wins on home ice. They did it in Edmonton. They did it in New Jersey. They did it in Montreal. So the home teams, home ice, home ice isn't always in the Stanley Cup playoffs the advantage that you think it might be, but certainly on this night, it absolutely was.
And it certainly was. And it was definitely fascinating to watch, because the one game that I did wonder about was whether if home ice was going to do the team any particular good. It was the Devils. And, like early on, it definitely appeared that it was until that third period. But I will tell you this, though. I think the Devils are particularly lucky to be in the position that they're in now, they're back on the series, obviously. But I say that is because the Devils, they have yet to score a power play goal in this series, and that's despite having the third best power play unit in the NHL during the regular season. And I think that really goes to show you that like the importance of, you got to take advantage of your opportunities on the man advantage. And I think that ultimately, like with them being back home, I do think that they absolutely, and I'm hoping that they're able to, for their sake, in game number 4 on Sunday, that they're able to figure things out on the man advantage. And I think home ice advantage is going to be a pivotal again in game 4 for the Devils, as they're going to look to tie it up on Sunday.
All right, so let's check out the playoff bracket as it stands right now after Friday's action. And things are getting a little bit tighter. Everything in the West now is 2-1 after the Oilers win over the Kings. The home teams in the Winnipeg St. Louis series and the LA Edmonton series have all won so far. Dallas and Colorado are also 2-1 in favor of the Stars, and Minnesota leading the higher seed there in Vegas, 2-1. So again, all of the 4 series in the West are all at 2-1 at this point. Over in the East, it was not looking so good, but we did get the other teams that had been trailing 2-0 to get wins in Montreal over Washington and New Jersey over Carolina. Ottawa, Toronto, you've got a 3-0 series lead for the Maple Leafs. They'll be looking to close it out with a win on Saturday, while Florida leads Tampa Bay 2-0 after 2 road wins. So it's been an interesting Stanley Cup playoffs to this point, but if you're a hockey fan, you want to see these series go as long as you can. So things in the West are looking a little bit more competitive, but we'll see how things go in the Eastern Conference. But it's been a very interesting Stanley Cup playoffs to this point.
It certainly has. And I think one of the things that I've absolutely loved about this first round so far is the fact that you've just had unsung heroes step up at key opportune time for their teams. And one of the things that I'm looking forward to seeing as it pertains to the Toronto-Ottawa series is who is going to step up for the Ottawa Senators as they look to force a game number 5. That's the one series as of right now, prior to Saturday's games, is in which that's one that could end potentially in a sweep. Now, as far as the Battle of Florida is concerned, man, game 3 back in Sunrise between the Lightning and the Panthers, that is something I'm going to be interested in seeing in terms of, can the Lightning get going offensively, having only scored 2 goals this entire series so far, and that's going to be a really big component as to whether they're able to get back in this series or not.
All right, well, 4 more big games coming up on Saturday: Lightning Panthers, Golden Knights Wild, Senators Maple Leafs, and Stars Avalanche. You got a taste of some of our local experts on this show. Make sure you check out the Locked On show of your favorite NHL team to get all the latest news and reactions. I'm Eddie Garcia. He's Shukri Wrights. Thanks for listening and watching Locked On NHL Game Night, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day.